I'd like to welcome Ian Chapman, Practice Director of Atkins Realis, to the webinar. Ian, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Right, well, thank you very much for joining the call, as Nina has said. So a bit about me, first of all, and I suppose why I'm interested in neurodiversity. Our journey began really, I suppose, when my son was diagnosed as autistic. And since then, my middle son was then also diagnosed as dyslexic, and my youngest is currently going through a similar diagnosis at the moment. So our sort of real understanding of neurodiversity and the challenges associated with it started probably about 10 or 12 years ago now. And really for us, the key thing was really sort of trying to understand the challenges they had and how they perceived the world, and what coping strategies can be applied, how things can just make things a little bit easier. Some of the things we sort of found particularly difficult were the spur of the moment things caused big meltdowns and big problems. And really what we found as soon as we had a diagnosis, the National Autistic Society gave us a lot of training, the early bird training, and that was excellent. And it really put us in the mindset of trying to understand where they're coming from, how the world is perceived, and really what that means is how they can cope with this and how they can perform to their best ability. So for me, my journey started in sort of neurodiversity in the workplace. From a purely selfish point of view, I want to make the workplace better for my sons. That's where I'm coming from. And if I can start here in Atkins and do something about it, then that's where I'm coming from. So that's my starting point. Is that helpful as a start?
Brilliant. Ian, it's really helpful because we've all got a story, haven't we? We've all got a personal story and reasons for why we do things. And I think what I'm hearing from you straight away is that need to understand. And once we understand what someone else's lived experience is, we can play our part in helping that lived experience to be more positive. And taking what you've learnt in your home life, in family life, and being able to then translate it into the workplace is a really special contribution as far as I'm concerned. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that on today's webinar. Thank you.
Okay, so onto my slides. So let me move them along. So yeah, as Nina said, nearly 30 years in the railway. From that point of view of wanting to make things better for my sons and the training that we've had from the National Autistic Society, it was then sort of by a matter of extension how that comes into the workplace. The second lot of training we had, which was the Early Bird Plus training, started to deal with, as our children would move to become adults, the challenge they might have. And it's things from on the autistic side where high levels of stimulation, which is the way that people are perceiving the world differently, and it can trigger many different responses. But one of the biggest impacts is the high levels of anxiety, and this can manifest itself in different ways, from people shutting down or sort of drawing into themselves to meltdowns and outbursts and emotional moments, and that continued level of real high anxiety then can lead into challenges with depression and unfortunately high levels of suicide. So it was something that became really important about how we sort of understand how we can make things better, how we can make things a more inclusive workplace, from reducing those triggers, reducing those levels of anxiety, and trying to make things so people can perform at their best. Because there are some real abilities that we see with people who are neurodiverse. Similarly, on the dyslexia side, somebody who's dyslexic will be working at a huge work rate. So their effort they're putting into their daily business of just reading the volume of information we have to get through can really mean that people are just getting very tired, or they need to take longer breaks, they need to take time out. But there are tools, there are mechanisms that can help and relieve that and reduce that level of work to people, again, help them perform. So really that was my sort of starting point. The other side of it is we're an engineering company, and there seems to be a correlation between the maths and science subjects and the amount of people who are neurodivergent. There's a correlation in that logical thinking, the sort of the creative side that comes along with it as well. And so some of the work we've done in Atkins, I'll talk about what we've done later, but we believe that our population of people who are neurodivergent in Atkins Realis is about 25 to 27%. When you then start to put that together with parents of neurodiverse children, there's probably around about a third of the company have some level of connection with neurodiversity. So we thought, well, okay, that's a big part of what we do. And as engineers, it's really trying to understand, well, if we want to make it a better place for people to be, first we want to make it an attractive place for people to work and stay and get the best out of them. Engineers, when it comes to business, aren't cheap. There's a lot of investment that's going into engineers. So it made sense to really invest in this and understand how we can, first of all, help our people perform well, hopefully make it so that our people want to stay because they recognise it as an inclusive place, and then start to talk much more outside the company about what we've done and really trying to attract people to come and join Atkins Realis. And we feel we've been on a long journey. It's been sort of 4 years now since we really kicked things off, and we've made a lot of changes, and I'm going to talk through some of those changes. But the key thing now is we feel that we're walking the walk. It's not just us talking outside about, isn't it good to be doing things about neurodiversity? We're actually saying we've made these changes, we've made a difference, we've made it a much more inclusive place. So this is where we've got to, but it's a journey we're on, and everyone's on this journey from awareness through to actually making physical changes to changing the cultural behaviour. So that's where we want to get to, and there's always more to learn. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is really wanting to talk much more openly with industry to share what we're doing, taking it as a very sort of similar approach to the way the industry has dealt with safety in the past. So we want to share what we're doing on a still with pride basis. Take whatever you see today and have a go at it with yourselves and share back with us what you're doing, any ideas that you've got, any things that you're doing, because it should be an open share to move us all along, because it is a developing area. It's thinking about this is coming along all the time. So as I mentioned, we launched the Neurodiversity Network in 2019. We've got 12 different employee networks in Atkins Realis. These are set up by the employees and run by the employees for the business. And we have a small budget that gets allocated, and that allows us to do some things, but we also then have to make a business case if we want to spend more money on different elements. We started the process really with following the launch event. We had a collaboration with UCL called the DARE survey, and this was something which didn't ask people, are you autistic, are you dyslexic, are you ADHD? It went through a series of questions to try and understand perceptions and challenges, to make an interpolation of what we thought the population would be of people who are neurodiverse in the company. And on the back of that, it also highlighted some areas that were challenges for people, and it developed a long list of interventions of things that we could adopt, and that really got us kick-started, because it gave us a bit of a plan of how we're going to do things. But then we knew we had a journey to take the business on, and that journey is on the right hand side there. So we said, let's start focusing on awareness, then we can move to the physical environment and starting to change that. And then it's taking a view about social and cultural practice and how we can get things much more inclusive from a personal point of view. So this journey, we started to look at this really from a point of view of, okay, where can we start? Let's form a support group. And we put a Yammer group together. This has now got over 1,000 members to it, and it's a really active Yammer group. We quite often have questions on there from people asking about reasonable adjustments or coping strategies, or problems with the sort of the family side of things, getting a diagnosis. Is it worth getting a diagnosis? What do you do with the diagnosis once you've got it? How to discuss with your line manager about the challenges you have. So that is a really useful group, and we find that there's such a rich discussion on there that is something I would recommend anyone starts, and it's using that as a point at which people can come together, offer their experience, offer their services, and offer their advice. We do a lot of webinars, and we continue to do webinars, and we try and make them coincide with key dates in the calendar, whether it's Autism Awareness Week or ADHD Awareness Month, and it's trying to make sure that we're doing things relevant to those items. We record all of them, and we put them on our SharePoint site. So that picture at the top right there, that's a screenshot from our SharePoint site. It's got a whole load of resources on there. It's where we store all of the things we do, so that people have got a link to anything they want. They can search through it and they can pull out things. I was searching on it yesterday. Actually, we're looking for a list of different media that are relevant to neurodiversity, and it's something we put together a little while ago with films, books, reading lists, podcasts that are absolutely relevant and people can delve into. And it was a question I've been asked by somebody whether we had a list, and so I was able to search through there and pull that out. We did develop a set of training courses with a company called Optimize, and this was about trying to upskill and again make aware the rest of the business. So we run a system called Workday, which is our HR system. All the training is embedded in there, and 4 courses are embedded in that Workday system. So we've got an awareness, a 101 course, which takes you through all the different areas of neurodiversity, and gives just an understanding for people about what the different challenges are, how people perceive the world, different coping mechanisms. There's a specific course for managers of people who are neurodiverse. There's one specifically for those who are recruiting as well. So if you're going through the recruitment process, how you can make your recruitment more inclusive. And that's a really useful course, because that really helps us start to get the people in, because one of the big barriers we have, the first barriers, is that recruitment process, and that's the first point at which we can turn people off from joining the company. So if we can make that more inclusive, that is a really good starting point to getting people into the company and then seeing what we can do. There's also a course for HR professionals, which again, like us, they're learning all the time, and this is a relatively new area. So that is something we wanted to make sure that our HR professionals were sort of brought along on that journey, and they start to see what's relevant to them and how they do their business. I just saw in the chat pane there that somebody's asked for the company name. It was a company called Optimize that we've used, and their course has been good. They've worked on that quite hard to develop, and it's got a lot of really good information in there. The other thing that we also run is an annual awareness survey. We use this in a couple of ways. One is to measure the performance of our network. How are we doing? How are we making things better? And we've certainly seen a change in that. In recent times, we've seen a move from where a lot of the feedback originally was around where people had disclosed their conditions, and it hadn't gone down well with their line managers. We're not getting so much of that anymore. That seems to have moved away. And we use that survey as well to drive what our actions are during the year, what things we want to do and what we want to try and tackle. So it's a really useful touch point that we have each year, running that survey, and we can see trends and what's happening. Then we start to move on to the physical environment. So what can we do with actually working here in Atkins Realis? And one of the big things we did was work very closely with estates to look at updating their policies. And it was something that became clear when I'm in Nova North at the moment, and this is one of our newer offices. And there's some quiet desks set aside. And the quiet spaces here are a bit like a little sort of cubby hole. There's no power, no permanent screen. We said, well, okay, it's good that it's a quiet desk, but it's not really a permanent seat you could sit in. So we decided to say, okay, let's now work with estates on their next build, which is the Epsom office, and how can we try and make that a better place? And things started to come along, like the seat booking system. So we had a better, quieter area, which had provision for power sockets, had a proper screen there, so you could spend the day there. And the seat booking system then allowed you to be able to book that seat, so you could then make sure you kept that seat available for yourself. Or somebody who wants that consistency of where they sit, they've got a seat booking system, in a hot desk environment, that you need to be able to have that consistency of where you sit every day and be ready for that consistency in your working day. But that was got us a way down the sort of the line, and we said, okay, well, what more do we need to have? What other things can we do? And that's when we started to look at things like specialist lighting provision. So people who are autistic sometimes can be very sensitive to the flicker of lights. So it's making sure we had specialist lighting available. And this are the sort of things that we started and put into our Chamberlain Square office build. So we've now got in there 3 wellbeing rooms. These are multifunctional rooms. They're used for faith network. If people want to go and pray in them, you can use it for expressing milk if nursing mothers are doing that. That's sinks in the rooms as well. But from a point of view of neurodiversity, it's somewhere quiet that somebody can go and just decompress. One of the walls is set up with a big sort of forest scene picture, and that biophilia really helps calm people down. And so it's something, if people are feeling that whole pressure of what's going on, there's always noise in the office. If it's getting too much, then somebody can go and just take the time out, just take time to wind down and reduce that level of anxiety. The other thing we did was reduce visual noise in the office. So in the offices in London, part of the design was having patterns on the carpet. Well, we've taken that away in Birmingham, so it's a plain carpet. The barriers between areas that were wooden slats that divided areas, again, too much visual noise, and they're now got living walls, so plants all across the walls, and again, it helps that biophilia to reduce levels of anxiety. We've also improved the wayfinding signage so that it's much easier to read and find your way around and where you need to go into the offices. So we're really pleased with Estates. They've done a really good job, but it is a journey. And so something we then said, well done Estates, that's great, but let's see where we want to get to. And so we've now developed the Neuro-Inclusive Office Design Guide. And it was something we wanted to sort of set the bar of, okay, where do we want to get to? What's our ultimate aim? Because that's the journey we want the Estates team to come on to, and they can then move through. As they do the next office, it'll get better and better. So we've done that, and that's sort of landed really quite recently, and that's something we're sort of quite pleased with and quite proud of as a network of trying to sort of like really push the thinking along in that space, and that's something we'll be publishing soon. The other thing we did was look at the software to improve accessibility. So previously to the network coming in place, if you wanted some speech to text or the text to speech recognition software, you had to go through the IT services provision, get it signed up by your line manager, and then have it installed by an IT professional on your machine. We said, well, if you need it, you just need it. So we managed to get that. So it's something now anyone can download, can turn on their machine. You don't have to get any approvals for it, and it's just there and available. So that we thought was a really good step for us. When it starts to come on to social and cultural practice, this is a little bit harder, and this is where things start to talk. Again, it's part of the awareness and part of how we sort of want to see ourselves in the future. So the first one was about relaxed obligation to social commitment. So something we talk about with the teams, and when we start to talk about neurodiversity and we present to people, is saying, quite often you'll see in teams, we're going down to the pub on Thursday night. Come along, it'd be great to have you there. And that sort of pressure on people can be something that they might focus on that for the whole week, as they're dreading this social event on a Thursday evening because they're just not comfortable with it. So it's trying to make people understand that when we do these social commitments or the social events, to say, we're going to have a social event on Thursday evening, or we're going to do something in the office. Come along if you want to. It's not making it a mandatory thing that people feel they must and obliged to do, because we want to make sure that it's relevant and right for the person. When it comes to inclusive recruitment, we tried as a network to look at how we would change our hiring practices, our procedures, and look to make sure we sort of like do it in a new inclusive way. But we found that really struggled, and so what we've done is we've engaged with the recruitment team, and we've taken that on as a let's look at how we can make the recruitment fully inclusive. So not just from a neurodiversity point of view, look at what are the best practices from all of the different networks. And that's what we've done. We've gone around and spoken to all our networks and said, what would you want to see in every stage of the recruitment cycle as the sort of your gold standard of recruitment? What's the wish list? And we've created a really big long list of things we could do. We've boiled that down then to each stage about what things we need to change, and those elements now we've built into a set of actions, and we're working through with the recruitment team, pulling those actions together. We've got a selection criteria pack now as part of the process, which we're trialing, and that's in 2 different practices in Kings Realis. We're going through those trials, and then that will be rolled out across the company as the guidance then we have for our recruitment. We're looking at how we advertise. We're looking at how we do the onboarding and the keep warm process, and all the way through to make sure we're trying to make our recruitment as inclusive as possible. There is a really good video actually from the National Autistic Society. It's called "Can You Stand the Rejection?" And if you get a chance, have a look at that. It's available on YouTube, and it really puts you in the seat of somebody who's going through a recruitment process and finding how difficult it can be. So I'd really recommend you have a look at that, because all of a sudden you start to see that and think, oh, I get it why our recruitment is so difficult for some people. And one of the statistics about autism in the workplace is that only 17% of people who are diagnosed autistic have a permanent job. You know, that is quite extreme, really. And you'd think there must be ways we can really change that and get these people who are really great thinkers. The benefits that come through from people who are neurodiverse in terms of when they're working well and they can really use their strengths to deliver their work, that's really important. And as companies, we're missing out on that if we're not being more inclusive of what we do. Some of the things we've done around the clothing choice. So again, if people are hypersensitive to certain feel and touch, it's making it so it's much more relaxed about what clothing people want to be able to wear in the office. Same with flexible working hours. So I talked earlier about people who are dyslexic needing that time out, needing time during the day to be able to recover from this high work rate, or others that maybe work at a different pace during different hours. Some people might want to start work later but work till much later in the evening, and that might be their best program of work. We've delivered a mentoring program. Again, we thought that was really useful to people to understand, if people are particularly struggling with the emotional intelligence side of things and understanding where to go, that a mentoring program can really help people understand how they want to deal with challenges in their day-to-day work, or what their career path needs to be, and how we can open those things up for them. One of the things we looked at as well, and this has been across all of the HR policies, was looking at making them more inclusive. And we've gone even from down the accessibility policy, which when we started to look at that was 20 pages of impenetrable text. So how can we make that different? So look at doing it in different ways to say, well, it doesn't have to be text. We could do it as a PowerPoint. We could do it as much different ways of doing things. So we've been through all those policies and gave our input into them. All they're being republished now. We've had a new policy that we've introduced as well called the Reasonable Adjustments Policy. So this is about people sitting down with their line managers and saying, I've got some challenges, I've got some needs. And the company will provide for those needs and make sure that we are making the everyday today work, people perform at their best. Quite often we get some questions around, or my line manager has said, well, your diagnosis is coming up in 3 months, let's wait until that diagnosis, and then we'll look at some reasonable adjustments. And our advice has been, no, you've got a need now. A diagnosis is just a bar. And so if you've got a requirement and a need, then let's fulfill that need, and let's make sure you've got the things you need to do your work right. One of the things we did early in the year is a little bit of fun, and again, it helps promote the Neurodiversity network, is the Neurodiversity coasters. And this is something we took as an idea from a Brazilian barbecue restaurant, where you have the red and the green card for more or less. And we had these plastic coasters produced where you can have them on your desk, and it identifies whether you're happy to be disturbed and you're ready for a chat with somebody, or you turn it the red side up and it says, please do not disturb, because you're focusing on work. So allows people to avoid being disturbed, allows them to focus on their job, and really help with that much more productive work for them. The other thing that we've done as well is our creative design group, they've had accessibility training. So this is about making all of our documents and templates much more accessible going forward. And it comes down to things that you wouldn't necessarily expect. If you put this slide deck through a screen reader, it would read everything on the screen. It would read the page number, it would read Atkins Realis in the bottom left. It wouldn't necessarily read it in the right order. But there are ways you can force the screen readers to read in the right order and only read certain parts of the text. So that is the sort of training that our creative design team have had to be able to help make things much more inclusive. So that's our journey. That's where we've been.